Hi, it's Kristen and this is the intimidating book tag. This tag is all about books that you've not read, that you've not got to yet for one reason or another, books that you might have been putting off or things like that. So I will run through the questions. I have the questions down here and the books down here. So I will take you through what I've not been reading and why I've not been reading them. So question 1 is, what is a book that you have been unable to finish? And now most of the time I will just, if I start a book, I will read it. And even if I'm not enjoying it, I will push through, even if it takes me ages. Or very occasionally I'll just DNF and I'll know I'm not going to go back to that book. But one I actually started at the beginning of last year, so January 2023, I started this book. I read 10 pages of it, and then over the next 6 months I read 20 more pages, dipping in and out, until it got to the point where I was I'm not going to finish this by the end of the year. I feel like I need to restart it. And that is The Guilty Feminist by Deborah Frances White. This is based on the podcast The Guilty Feminist, which is a podcast I really enjoyed. And I bought the book when it came out in paperback. I even bought the signed edition of it because I was so excited about it. And then it's just never sort of felt like the right time to read it. I feel like I need to get into it. I found at least part of this on audio, so I'm going to try it that way, because I do definitely feel like I need to start from the beginning when I do read it. But I've had it on my TBR for ages, so I just need to get around to starting again and actually finishing it this time. So that's one that I, have been unable to finish. Not because I don't think it's good, I just feel like I've not been in a non-fiction mindset. Not on audio. Most of the non-fiction I've listened to this year, or in the past couple of years, has been on audio, so I think I need to at least get into this book that way. So yes, that's the answer for number 1. Question 2 is, what book have you yet to read because you just haven't had the time? And for me, that would be Everyday Sexism by Laura Bates. This, again, is non-fiction feminist text. And I've just not got around to it, even though it's been on my shelf for ages. Again, because I feel like this one is going to be lots of stats. It's gonna be quite intense to read about, and I've just not pushed myself to get around to it, because I think this is one that I'll read over the course of several months while I read other fiction books alongside it. And so it's just never been one that I've thought, ooh, I'll pick that up, that'll be fun. I feel like it's one I need to concentrate on. I also want to make a video on it, I think a Feminist Friday video on it, and those videos are either really quick and easy to make or quite time consuming depending on what I'm reading. And so I just feel like I've not had the oomph to get around to this one yet. But I will get to all my feminist non-fiction. Question 3 is, what is a book you have yet to read because it's a sequel? And for me, that is The Dragon Republic by R.F. Kuang. This is a sequel to The Poppy War. I read The Poppy War a few years ago now. It took me a while to pick up the sequels, but I finally have the 2nd and 3rd book, and I've still not got around to them. I think partly the size puts me off. But also the first book was so intense that I'm ooh, I need to be in the right mindset to get back into that universe. This is war, fighting, magic. Book 1 ended in a very, oh shit, where do we go from here kind of way. Very morally ambiguous characters. Yeah, they make questionable choices over a lot of things. But yeah, I really liked book 1. I feel like I need to reread book 1 as well, which is sort of why I've not been getting around to this. But I will. I'll reread book 1 and then I'll read the sequels. Question 4 is, what book have you yet to read because it's brand new? For me, that is Swift and Saddled by Lila Sage. This is like book 2, companion book to Done and Dusted. This is about a like family, like generally the whole series is about a family who own like a ranch, and book 1 is about the girl, the daughter, the sister in the family, and this one is about her older brother, and then I think book 3 is about the eldest brother, and then there's a 4th book also coming out. I enjoyed book 1. I thought the setting was fun, cowboy romance. This one I saw in a shop recently for quite cheap, and so I picked it up. And yeah, I do think this one will be quick to read whenever I do get around to it though, because I read the first one quite quickly. So Weston, our main character, our main guy, wants to expand on the ranch and open like a guest house or like a B&B people can come stay at, and he hires this woman Ada to be the like interior designer and help bring his vision to life, and then obviously they're gonna hit it off. But yeah, this one is a new acquired book to me, so I've just not got around to reading it yet, but I will. Question 5 is, what is a book you've yet to read because you read another book by this author and didn't enjoy it? And for me, that is One Day by David Nichols. A lot of people say this is great. The TV show adaptation came out of it this year and people loved that. I do know how it ends, so like I've been spoiled for that. But this one, people always hype up when you talk about David Nichols. I read Starter for 10 by David Nichols a few years ago and I really didn't enjoy it. Didn't like it that much. So I'm not sure if that's just because like I didn't like that plot, I didn't like those characters, or if David Nichols was not for me, but I guess at some point I'll give this a go and see if, yeah, maybe some David Nichols is for me, or if this is like 2 books and I'm done with David Nichols. But yeah, this is about like people who become friends, this man, this woman, who become friends in university, and they like really hit it off. But then they finish university and sort of go their separate ways, but they meet up on like one day each year, or we see them. I don't know if they like meet up in between that, but we only see one day each year. But anyway, this like spans over time and it's about their friendship and romance. So it sounds interesting. Sounds more my thing than Starter for 10, to be fair. So I will give this a go one day. Question 6 is, what is a book you've yet to read because you're just not in the mood for it? And I'm going to say Afterworlds by Scott Westerfeld. I picked this up years ago. And I've just never read it because I've just never felt compelled to pick it up, and I sort of regret buying it because it's just sitting on my shelves and it's not like a small book to just go, I'm just gonna pick it up and read that and be done with it. It is in the like nearly over 500 pages, so you know, I don't know why it doesn't appeal to me, because it's about a girl who's a writer, and I think like she meets someone and has like a little romance with them while she's like struggling with being an author and stuff. And then I think there's also points where we get the book she's writing interspersed in here, and that appeals to me. Like in other books I'm like, ooh, a writer character, ooh, you get the book as well as the book. And yet I don't know why I haven't picked it up. I don't know if there's like a slight element to me that's like, oh, it's about a female character. I think it might be a queer relationship, like 2 women. Don't hold me on that, and that might not be it, that might be part of the book, but it is listed as LGBT on like lists and things I've seen. So I don't know if it's the author's storyline or if it's like the book character is the queer character. But I don't know if it's because it's like, it's women written by a man. that puts me off. I don't know if that's sort of lodged itself in my head and that's why I'm not picking it up. But yeah, I've never felt compelled to pick it up. I've always been like, I'm in the mood for like a romance, I'll read this thing. Or I'm in the mood for like more of a literary fiction or a book about writing, I'll pick up this thing. And this has never been the one that I go to, but I need to read it because I think next year I'll have owned it for like 10 years or something. That's just ridiculous. Question 7 is, what book have you yet to read because it's humongous? The biggest book on my TBR is The Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. This is a big guy. How big exactly is it? If we get rid of the timeline, if we get rid of the glossary, if we get rid of like the character lists, then it's 804 pages. I have fallen off reading like big chunky fantasy books in recent years. I used to read a lot of them. There was a whole phase when I was like late teens, early 20s, where I read like a ton of the Song of Ice and Fire series. I was reading a lot of fantasy and I sort of fell off doing that. And I need to get back into that. And this one is one I'm interested in. Dragons, it's like queendoms. I've just heard it's like really epic and interesting, and there's like politics, which I really like in my fantasy. I know some people don't, but I really enjoy a political fantasy. I'll reiterate dragons. That's fun. That's cool. And then I believe it's also queer, which is cool. So yeah, I really need to get to this one because it's kind of ridiculous that I haven't, because I've had this on my shelves for a while now. And every year I'm like, in autumn, in winter, I'm gonna read Priory of the Orange Tree. I'm gonna set aside a month to read it. And then I just don't. So I need to. But yeah, I've not got around to it because it's so big. And I do sort of think I need to set aside a good chunk of time to get to it. Question 8 is, what book have you yet to read because it was a cover buy that turned out to have poor reviews? And for me, that is The Lamplighters by Emma Stonex. This cover is gorgeous. It's the first thing that drew me to it when I saw it. This gold foil, lovely. The like blue mixed with the really bright like pinky red, the black, the swirls. It's just really stunning. And then you've got like the lighthouse in the middle. Beautiful. The cover drew me to this, and then I heard about the book and I thought it sounded really interesting. It's about 3 lighthouse keepers in 1972, and they disappear, but the door is locked from the inside. The clocks have stopped and the table is set for a meal left uneaten. That premise just sounds so cool to me, and I was really interested. And then we go to 20 years later and we follow the women they've left behind, so like their partners, their daughters, I imagine. That premise just sounds so interesting. And then I was like putting it on my Goodreads or like looking it up at one point, and it has a pretty low rating. Let's look it up actually. Maybe the rating's changed. I'm gonna open Goodreads and see what the rating is and maybe be like horrified again. Okay, now the rating is better than it was. It's a 3.52. That's not bad. But when I initially, I think, brought it home and then like looked it up, it had like a 3.3 something, maybe like a 3.34 or something. So I was a little bit like, oh, okay. I mean, that's not dreadful. It's not like it had a 2 point something, but its rating has got better. So that gives me some resurgence. But this just sounds really interesting. It was a cover buy, but in that I like initially picked it up because I liked the cover, and then I read it and thought that sounds really interesting, and so bought it. I don't think there's any books that I've just bought based on cover and not even read what it's about. That's not my vibe. I need to at least read the synopsis and go, that sounds interesting enough. But yeah, well, now I don't feel so bad about this. Now that the ratings have gone up, maybe I'll pick it up sometime soon. It feels like it could be like a good, yeah, autumn winter book. It's like isolated, windy, rainy. And the final question, question 9, is what is the most intimidating book on your TBR? And I was thinking about this and I was like, oh, I don't know. Would it just not be like The Priory of the Orange Tree again because it's so big? Or like one of the ones I've not got around to for ages? And then I thought of this book and I went, no, that is it. That is like the one book I'm genuinely kind of scared of. And that is The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. There are multiple reasons why I've built this up in my mind. One, I've never read N.K. Jemisin. N.K. Jemisin is like known for being like an incredible fantasy sci-fi writer, and I feel like with a certain reputation comes a certain like awe that I have, or like a hesitancy, because I'm like, this author is so revered, so well respected. What if I'm like the one person that doesn't like their books? So there's that element. This is also a book that I had for my in real life book club when that was a thing that I did years ago. And this was one I bought specifically for that, even though I'd been interested in it. I thought this will push me to read it. This will push me to finally buy it, finally pick it up. But then I believe that month is the month that I ended up going into hospital for like a health reason years ago. And so I didn't read it because I was unwell. And so like didn't have the attention span to be reading anything intense. And also was just like, yeah, while I was in hospital, I was like, this is not the book I want to be reading. And then when I got out of hospital, I just wanted to like lie on the sofa and watch movies. And then by that point, by the point of like me getting out of hospital and then being able to like be up and about again, we were too close to my book club meeting for me to like read all of this and catch up. So I just didn't bother. I just didn't read it. And then I just kept not picking up and not picking up and not picking up. And now, yeah, it's been on my TBR for, now see, if that was when I went into hospital, that was 5.5 years ago from when I'm filming this now, because that was in the May of 2019. Because it was on my birthday. I was hospitalised on my birthday. Very fun for me. So yeah, that was like 5.5 years ago. So it's like built up to be this thing. And also another reason is I've heard people say, like, once you've read it, you go like, what an incredible story. And you like want to read the sequels. But when you start it, people say, you go, what is happening? I don't understand what's going on. What are we doing here? And I've heard, yeah, it's very confusing. It's a very like intense book. You really have to concentrate when you're reading it. And that's always like put me off. Yeah. And again, it's like, it's not huge. It's, I think like 400, oh, that whole last chunk is just about the author and stuff. So it's actually slightly shorter. And that's an appendix. There's lots of, okay, if we get rid of the author's note, we get rid of the appendix, we get rid of all that stuff. This is 449 pages. That's not actually ridiculous. Okay, this is me talking myself into reading this. But yeah, there's many reasons. How big it is, the fact that it's an intense fantasy, dystopian, sci-fi. It's like about the end of the world, which again, like I didn't read it that first year I had it because of like not focusing on it because of health reasons. And then the following year, we had COVID, so reading about like the end of the world didn't massively appeal initially, and I was just wanting to read like lots of short books or get through things, not get wound up in a intense book. But this does appeal to me because it is, I believe, about like the end of the world in terms of like climate problems. There's a climate podcast that I listen to which is about books and how like reading books about climate change and reading like non-fiction about climate change, reading fiction about climate change, and I think there's an episode where they read this and they talk about it, so I do want to read it for that reason. It talks about death, betrayal. That sounds interesting. I believe there are maybe like queer relationships in here, which again appeals. I'm talking myself up into reading this. Do I read this year? Before the end of the year? But I also wanted to read this before the end of the year, and this seems like a lot to do. Maybe I do. Oh my goodness. If there's one thing I'll say for this tag, it's making me want to pick up some of these books that I've been putting off, so will that happen? Maybe I'll have to like rewatch this tag in like a year or something and see if I have picked up any or all of these books. That could be fun. Maybe that's what I'll do. I'll need to make a note so I remember to do that in a year's time. But yes, that is probably the most intimidating book on my TBR. There we have it. What is the most intimidating book on your TBR? Let me know below. What are your answers to any of these other questions? Like, what is the biggest book you own? How many pages is it? Because part of me thinks like this will take me ages to read. But then sometimes if I'm really into a book, I can read them quite quickly. And part of me is like, do I just try and read this in like a week? Maybe. We'll see. We'll see. I'm hesitant about all of these books, but also excited for most of them. So maybe I just gotta like hunker down and get to them. Let me know your answers to these questions below. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you soon with another one. Bye!